Police try to crack down. Offenders are getting better at hiding it. In this CTV News special report, Paul Karwatsky looks at why people continue to drive intoxicated.
The road, where the pavement meets anxious drivers and breakneck speeds. It's a place to be focused, and yet many Montrealers are not. From a meal behind the wheel to a chat on the cell phone, there are plenty of examples of distraction out there. But it's the image of texters staring at their screens instead of the road that stands out again and again. For the SQ's traffic squad, it's a daily sight and a daily chase.
That girl over there seems to be really concentrated once again.
Officer Gail Green has had her eyes on drivers for years. Since legislation banning in-car cell use was enacted in Quebec 2 years ago, she says there's been a noticeable transition from talking to texting, and that's made her job more difficult.
It's very, very hard to tell, especially when you're far away.
Despite the challenge, in mere minutes, Green nabs a first culprit.
I'm sure it's very dangerous. Just that it's hard not to do it.
Moments later,
She was texting.
another texter pulled over and another ticket inked.
So what's the penalty in this case, just having it in her hand?
It's the same as if you were actually using the phone, $80 plus the charges and 3 points.
While making that stop with police lights flashing and meters behind another officer in uniform,
Was it a cell phone?
yet another unsuspecting texter caught with a phone in hand. Ticketed for texting and apologetic, driver Lina Blanchette shares a shocking story.
I've in the past had a motorcycle accident.
Lina still limps as a result of that horrific crash. She was a passenger on her friend's motorcycle when the two veered off the road. The two had been drinking.
She died instantly, and I was brought to the hospital, almost died there, and was in 1 month into coma, and then was 2.5 years in rehab. We always think that it's not going to happen.
Yet increasingly, it does happen. Police say texting is just as dangerous as drunk driving. Looking down to your cell phone for 4 seconds equates to driving blind for the length of a football field. So much risk, yet so hard to stop.
Yep, I have space on Friday.
Linda Coleman is a clinical social worker who believes she knows why.
Well, I work with all kinds of addictions. I've worked with internet and alcohol, drug. And now there's texting.
An addiction, she says, that appeals to basic human instinct.
When we're texting, we're getting immediate gratification. And if you're constantly in a state of waiting for that response, it creates the same kind of hormonal release that any high-risk behavior does. And that becomes addictive. That surge of adrenaline is addictive.
Please say a command.
So some drivers just can't kick the habit. Well, that's something car companies are recognizing. Hands-free onboard texting devices like this one are becoming more and more common in new cars and trucks, offering drivers a safer way to send and receive those messages out on the road.
Please stay alert to changing road conditions.
Options for texters aren't limited to expensive automotive gear. iPhone and BlackBerry apps promise similar easy no-touch texting.
Reads texts.
But Scott Phelan says hands-free technology isn't exactly flying off the shelves.
We pitch 100% of the people who buy cell phones with us, whether it's a new activation or an upgrade, on getting a hands-free device for their own safety. And really the take rate is 15%.
For Phelan, it's not only aggravating because sales are slow, but because his own son almost died in an accident this past summer while watching his phone instead of the road.
Stick the phone away and out of sight.
John Phelan studies engineering and is a budding rugby star, but all that almost ended.
And when I looked up, I had about 10 meters of space going at 100 kilometers an hour to make a decision. So I swerved to the right since I was alone in the car. The hood of my car looked like a triangle after that. The passenger side was compressed right into about a couple inches from my knees. I was lucky to get away with bruises and scrapes.
He doesn't own a car anymore, only borrowing one when he visits his family in the West Island. Their visits his mom and sisters now especially cherish.
Hopefully, you know, with all this going on right now, maybe someone will listen and they won't text.
Police are just starting to log texting as a potential cause of accidents in Quebec. South of the border, 16,000 people were killed as a result of texting and driving between 2001 and 2007.
We often need to learn by fear because I'm very aware, I'm very sensitized by what I went through, and yet I was still on the phone that day. Too often we have to go through something that has a very serious impact, like an accident.
And with more and more people texting and driving, it seems it will take a lot more accidents before the danger finally clicks for Quebecers. Paul Karwatsky, CTV News.
Griffintown is becoming a hot neighborhood. It's full of art galleries. Another one opens tonight. Lisabelle is the name of the gallery and the artist behind it. Christine Long is on Ottawa Street. Chris, bold colors, big canvases.